This is part 3 of how I found my mother, and about my life, about the Bubbla's life. So where I was in the last one is I was talking about how I had a volunteer. We could pick a volunteer. Either we can volunteer or they could pick a name out of a hat, and my name ended up getting picked out of a hat. So when my name got picked out of the hat, and they said, we want to keep you. I was like, no, I'm just going to go because it's only fair to everybody else. So what they did is they let me go home for leave for 17 days. And I believe it was 17 days. That's all I got. And they said, you might as well take leave because when you go there, you're going to be training nonstop. You're going to get no time for leave. So what I did is I took leave. And what leave means is going home going home. And so I didn't have a biological family. I didn't have really nowhere to stay, except for I had a friend named Harrison, and that didn't really work out. I only was able to stay with him for a day. And so what I did is I stayed with an elderly couple that helped me out during high school when I couldn't afford stuff. Like I couldn't afford a yearbook, and I couldn't afford a ring, and I couldn't afford a tuxedo for prom. But she made it happen for me. There was a lady named Mrs. Peckham and her husband, and they really went out to bat for me when I was in a group home and I couldn't afford these things that the normal kids had. So I stayed with her for a little bit, and during this time, I was like, I'm gonna use this time to look for my family, and I didn't really have a lot of information. All I had was a birth certificate that said the street that I was born at, 34 Morning Street in Providence, Rhode Island. I knew my mom's name was Nancy Arnold when she gave birth to me, and then later she got married and she became Nancy Costa, and then she got divorced, but I know she kept Nancy Costa. Well, I believe she did. I knew she lived in Providence. I knew I had a brother named Joey, a sister named Marina, and that's really, and I knew my dad's name was Elliot Melendez. That's the only information that I knew. And I'm gonna turn this down because it's a commercial. We don't need to be hearing no commercial when I'm talking. This is my show. It's not the commercial show. All right. So basically, where was I? So that's the only information that I had. So what I did is when I was at Mrs. Peckham's house, I was going on the computer and I was going in the phone book and calling everybody up that had Arnold or Costa and Melendez. And I was looking all, in the phone book and on the computer and calling people up and ring, hello, may I speak with, Nancy Costa, this is she. Hi, Nancy Costa. My name is David, and my name used to be David Arnold. Did you have a son named David Arnold or David Costa? I just kept making that same call over and over and over again, and nobody was my mom and nobody was my dad. And so what I did is I went to the actual address that was on my birth certificate, and I went knocking on the door, and that house was actually burnt down. So I went to different houses in the neighborhood, and still, just make sure that my time's good. Okay. Put that up too, and let me put my, okay. So I went to different houses in the neighborhood and asked the same question that I was asking the people on the phone. And no one knew anything about my dad, and no one knew anything about me, or my mom. And so what I did is I went to the police station to see if they had any records. And they had a record for my dad, and they gave me an address, and I went to that address, and no one knew anything. And so what I did was I went to the city hall. Because when I was adopted, my adopted dad, where I had all the abuse in that home, he was a private detective. So he used to go to the city hall to look for stuff when he was looking for people. So I was like, okay, let me go to the city hall. So I went to the city hall, and when I was at the city hall, I talked to a couple different people, and no one knew anything. And then I went to the income tax place. Forgive Forgive me if I'm boring you. I've told the story so many times it's boring me. No, I'm just playing. But it's an exciting story. So yeah. So I went to the income tax office and I spoke to a gentleman there and explained my situation. I'm in the military. I'm only here this amount of days and I don't have much time left. And during that time, it was maybe around 8 or 9 days before I had to go back home. And he worked at the senator's office for 35 years. So what he did is he had me go over to the senator's office. And I went to the senator's office and I was, gave them the information that I had, the little information I had. Spoke to a lady named Fran Raymond. And talked to a gentleman that was there. And a gentleman tried the computer thing one more time and it didn't work. And then they told me to come back for lunch. I went and had lunch, came back. And they said, David, what you need to do is you need to go home and Fran will give you a call in the next couple of days, And so I went home and I was supposed to go back, I think, on a Friday. And I didn't because I was actually in town in Newport. And I remember I was also invited to a party to a guy that, best his peace now. His name is Charlie Shaws. But I was invited to a party that night. And then on Saturday or Sunday, she wasn't working. And I found out that she gave me a call from Mrs. Peckham, the elderly lady that I was with. And so Monday and Tuesday, I called up and she was sick. I missed her call. So now I'm like, she might have some information. I hope she doesn't die. Because if she dies, then I'll never be able to find my mom. And I'll never be able to find my dad, and she might have some information that I might need to find my mom and to find my dad. So, I called up, she was sick both of those days, and then I received a call on the third day, and she's like, hey, David, what you need to do is you need to write a letter to your mother and father, and you need to bring it to the Social Security Department. And so, I wrote a letter to my mom and dad and said, hey, you know what, Mom and Dad, I forgive you, I love you. I told him what I was doing in the military, and I said, you know what, I believe in God, and I gave God my life, and He's in my life as Lord and Savior, as He has forgiven me, I also forgive you. And so I just told him, what I was doing in life. Told him I graduated in high school. Told him I played different sports, and went to the Social Security Department. Talked to a couple people there. No one knew anything. Had to sit down, and if anybody's been to the Social Security Department, you know how long you have to sit down for. And then finally someone told me to come back. They said, told me to explain the situation. I explained the situation. They said, David, what you need to do is you need to write a letter to the Social Security Department. If we accept that letter, we'll use what little information that you have to try to locate your family. If we find your family, we can't let you know. If we do find your family, we can't let you know. It's totally up to them to get in contact with you. So I was like, man, you know what? I was about to give up, I tried a couple more, calling a couple numbers over the phone, and I wrote a letter to the Social Security Department, gave them what little information that I had, gave them 2 letters from my mom and my dad, and was about to give up, and I just, I said, God, I put this in your hands, and if it's your will, then so be it. I'll see my mom and I'll see my dad. If it isn't, then so be it. I have to go to I believe this is part 4.